Can you all hear me? Apologies for our lateness, we were out there with the press. In the first instance, good morning to you all. Fantastic weather we have today. I think the sun's shining especially for us. Before I begin, though, as you can see, we are videoing this entire presentation, mainly for the people that are absent, that haven't been able to get here or don't have seats. So we will be putting it on YouTube and our website and possibly on Facebook. If anybody objects, either you let Rafa know or you hide, basically. There's not an awful lot else I can do, I'm afraid. I should like now to introduce you to this top table and to thank, in the first instance, the British Ambassador, Mr. Simon Manley, for attending, and Charmaine Arbuin, to my right here, who is the British Consul for Andalusia and the Canaries. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're both very busy. We're off afterwards, actually, to another meeting in Manilva, and then tomorrow in Almeria, so we are all very busy. We also have sitting next to me here our Mayor of Mijas, Juan Maldonado, and we're also accompanied today by two of our legal experts, which is Miguel Checa, who is a solicitor and a university lecturer, and sitting next to him is Victoria Westhead, who's the legal advisor of our association. Some members, as I've said, haven't been able to attend, so Judy Filmer, wave your hand. She's the Facebook moderator. She's got a badge on. We've taken some questions for people that were unable to attend that expressly want us to ask them, so we'll be sharing those questions. You will see that we also have with us today some of our sponsors. We are totally not-for-profit association, and you'll see there's a couple of pots floating around. If anybody would like to make a donation, it will be greatly received, because otherwise we rely very heavily on our sponsors, who are here obviously to talk to you. They are the experts. They will make special offers to you, take details of you, contact you, and do all they can to possibly help. Before I move on, actually, I forgot to introduce myself. For those who don't know me, I'm Anne Hernandez. I'm president of Brexpats in Spain. Let me just give you a little bit of information on us before we move on. We, as you may know, exist to defend the rights of the British here in Spain, and also of the Spanish who are in the UK. I've left some information on your seats. Some of you have been looking at it. You have the programme. You have some information about Brexpats. And very importantly, that I'll talk about in a little while, this campaign that we're honoured to be involved in, which is to change the law regarding joint nationality of British Spanish in Spain. To explain a little bit, it's not exactly reciprocal, because the Spanish in the UK can actually have double nationality, though here we cannot. And it is down to Spain that we need to change. The UK are quite happy with doing it, and I think Simon could confirm that. So that's going to be a big push that we're trying for, because for some that's going to be your absolute saving grace, maybe, if push comes to shove at the end of it. As I've said, we are a not-for-profit, but we're also not political. In as much as I know Brexit is a political issue, but we kind of feel that at the end of the day, the results will be felt by all of you, whatever your personal or political opinion is. So we accept everybody, which is quite different to some other groups, I must admit. We started merely as an idea of mine, I suppose, back in June the 24th, I believe it was, 2016, the very next day to the referendum. When I was talking with some friends, and by then, I mean, I've been here a long time. I don't have a Spanish passport. I'm always asked why. I used to be married to a Spaniard. I could have done at the time. There was never any need for it, basically. I'm European, and I didn't need to change my nationality. But anyway, the concerns, I suppose, after the referendum, predominantly, I must say, from the elderly, were that, oh my God, Spain's going to chuck us out, we've got to leave, how am I going to sell my house now, what am I going to do with my dogs, etc., etc. Lots of issues. Yeah, you laugh, Simon, but you know, that's family for some people. I have my 4 doggies. I also have a daughter here. Well, you can have one. I also help with rescue doggies. I forgot more about now too. You've lost my ELO. Yes, and as a result of that, I went and spoke to Juan Maldonado, the Mayor of Mijas, and suggested perhaps he might be interested in supporting a little group, which started off purely as Brexpats in Mijas. We started a Facebook page, we started a website, and by then we were getting quite concerned requests, pleas, from all around Spain and the islands. So we very quickly changed our name to Brexpats in Spain, and that's where we are now with over 5,000 members. We, obviously, being just a small group of founder members, the team, so to speak, we can't get around to everybody. So what we have done is set up representatives who work under the umbrella, I suppose, of Brexpats in Spain in different regions, which is quite interesting because then we can get the same information shared to everybody. We work very closely with the embassy, with Charmaine as well, and we get, I suppose, privy to all sorts of information that otherwise might not be, it's known, but it might not be seen or heard by many. But our main mission is to dispel the horrible rumour mongering, scaremongering, etc., and just provide you with proper, reliable and professional information, because there's so many rumours that abound, it's just unbelievable. And I'm forever saying, no, that's not the case. Well, it is because I read it somewhere. Sorry to any press that are here today, but I'm seeing them flashing cameras as I say that. Perhaps I shouldn't smile at that. Anyway, I suppose having mentioned Mr. Juan Carlos Maldonado, it would be a very appropriate moment for me to pass to him. You don't want to carry on listening to me. We've got lots more to hear. So, ahora, adelante. Mr. Juan Carlos Maldonado, the Mayor of Mijas, and we have someone over there who's going to interpret for him, if not me.
Buenos días y bienvenidos todos. Embajador, gracias por su presencia en Mijas, muy importante, orgulloso de tenerlo con nosotros. Señora Cónsul, igualmente agradecido por su presencia. La asociación Brexpats, que prácticamente forma parte de Mijas como el tejido asociativo tan importante que tenemos. Y en definitiva, gracias también a los ponentes, bienvenidos todos, ¿no? Para Mijas es muy importante jornadas como la de hoy. Estamos en nuestro municipio apostando duramente en colaboración con la asociación Brexpats que nació en Mijas para intentar que nuestros vecinos, 11.000 británicos que conviven con nosotros, tengan las mejores condiciones de vida. No solo por la gestión que puede hacer el propio ayuntamiento, sino también el ayuntamiento como interlocutor o intermediario con otras administraciones para intentar ser el altavoz de vuestras demandas, vuestras reivindicaciones. El Brexit es un proceso que ha generado incertidumbre. La incertidumbre no es buena en economía, y no os quiero hablaros en términos económicos, quiero hablaros en términos personales. Sois vecinos de Mijas y para Mijas es muy importante que viváis con nosotros porque muchos mijeños, gracias a vuestra apuesta por Mijas, están viviendo, están trabajando en definitiva. Por tanto, como es tan importante para nosotros y nos va la vida y formáis parte de nuestra vida, el Ayuntamiento de Mijas va a estar siempre colaborando con la Asociación Brexpats, poniéndonos a disposición de las distintas administraciones y evidentemente también con esa sensibilidad que ha mostrado el embajador. Estaremos continuamente en contacto para trasladaros lo que hoy también viene personalmente a deciros, y es que de alguna manera este proceso, aun cuando genere incertidumbre, al final se despejarán. Y estoy convencido que será por el bien de todos el que la convivencia siga existiendo y que sigáis eligiendo Mijas para vivir, Andalucía, España, pero evidentemente con vuestro corazón británico, como no puede ser de otra manera. Muchas gracias por la jornada y a vuestra entera disposición.
I've been let down by the interpreter. Apparently I have to translate. So in brief, he says, obviously, thank you very much, everybody, for attending. It's a great honour here to have Mr. Simon Manley and Charmaine Albuin. He would like to express his 100% support and collaboration for the Association of Brexpats in Spain. He knows it's extremely important to support the residents of Mijas and to ensure that the quality of your life here is as best as possible. He also knows that Brexit has a great deal of uncertainty, not just economically, but obviously personally. And he would obviously like to make it as easy as possible for us all. I think that was about it in a nutshell. ¿Has dicho algo más? Tú no sabrás, ¿verdad?
No, lo más importante, más que decir, os voy a escuchar continuamente. Si lo puedes trasladar, porque no depende del ayuntamiento, pero sí como administración más cercana, siempre vamos a estar...
Okay. The one thing he would like to stress is that he is here to listen. 100% to listen. So if you have any problems or you want to talk, then please, the administration of Mijas is here to listen to you and to help you along the way. So thank you very much. This has got the wobbles. And I suppose that's quite an opportune moment now to introduce you to the British Ambassador, Mr. Simon Manley. And thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anne, for inviting us down here. It's a real pleasure for Charmaine and myself to be here with some of the rest of our team both from Madrid and from Malaga. As you know, this isn't the first such event that we've done since the referendum result. It's one of a whole number that we've done across the whole length and breadth of Spain over the last few months. And I just wanted to kind of say, first of all, a really big thank you, two big thank yous. One to Anne and her team in Brexpats in Spain for the manner in which they have worked with us from day one, which I think has been genuinely collaborative and transparent and honest. Whatever you think about the Brexit vote, whichever way you voted or didn't vote, didn't have the chance to vote. I think it's really important that we kind of get on with the business of ensuring that those of you living here in Spain and the many thousands of Spaniards living in the UK can continue with their lives in as far as we can. And let me come on to a second kind of on the substance of that. But I think each and every time that we've had meetings with Brexpats in Spain, we've learnt more. Genuinely learnt more about the issues that are on the table and the issues that we need to treat. Y muchas gracias, señora alcalde, por su presencia, por su colaboración. La colaboración entre nosotros y los ayuntamientos en toda España es clave, ¿no? I was saying that for me, the cooperation, the collaboration that we have with the mayor and with the other mayors right up and down Spain in areas where Brits live is absolutely key now. Será clave en los años que vienen. That it will be key in the years to come. En el proceso de llevar a cabo los acuerdos que tenemos y que tendremos, ¿no? That it's not just now, it's not just in this process, as the Mayor rightly said, of listening to all of you, of understanding and working with you, but also in the process over the months and years to come as we implement the agreements that we reach with the European Union. And just, I suppose, just as a sort of introduction to today, and I was going to say, I should have said at the start, if anybody ever doubted why Brits come to live in Spain, come here on a March morning and see this beautiful place in this gorgeous light and with the snow-capped mountains of the Sierra Nevada. I've decided to move my office to that little terrace out there. Enough of Madrid. Any case, I mean, we're at an important. I mean, I think it's really interesting and important that we're meeting today, of all days, because as many of you will know, tonight and tomorrow there is a meeting of the European Council in Brussels of the heads of government of the 28 member states of the European Union, including the United Kingdom, until the 28th of March next year. And at that meeting, we'll be discussing a few things. We're discussing jobs and growth across Europe. We'll be discussing the dreadful attack in Salisbury on Mr. Skripal and his daughter, and the use of chemical weapons on British, European soil for the first time since the Second World War. But we'll also be discussing the issue of Brexit. And we'll be discussing the issue of Brexit because on Monday of this week, as many of you will know, the British negotiating team, who had been working all weekend after many, many weeks of negotiation, came to an agreement with Michel Barnier, the head of the European Commission negotiating team, negotiating on behalf of the other 27 member states, came to an agreement which is for us really important. Let me just briefly sketch out where we are, because I know you'll have lots of questions and quite possibly some concerns. You'll remember that back in December, we came to the sort of first big agreement on the terms of our departure from the European Union. An agreement which covered many things, but three things in particular. First and foremost was the issue of citizens and citizens' rights, and in which we reached an agreement that effectively the rights of those already living, whether it be Spaniards and others living in the United Kingdom or Brits living here in Spain and other member states, would be maintained in very large part following our departure. One or two issues that were left unresolved in that agreement, which we've continued to negotiate, and let me come back to those, but it was a kind of broad political agreement. The other two areas of agreement were on the UK's continuing budget contribution. How much would we be paying into the European Union until our departure? And the third issue, as many of you know, was the issue of Northern Ireland and how we would resolve some of the complex issues around Northern Ireland as we left the European Union. What we've been doing since December has been, in particular, to turn that political agreement into a kind of piece of legal text. Complex operation, but really important. And really important, I think, for two sets of people. And since I have far more knowledgeable and distinguished people to my left on this matter, I'm sure they'll be able to explain why it's so important. But what we've been trying to do is to turn the political agreement in December into what is basically a draft legal treaty. And that's important because that is the legal basis, will be the legal basis for the continuity of your rights here in Spain as residents in Spain, just as it will be the basis for the continuity of legal rights of Spaniards living in the UK. It's been a complex business, but we are really well advanced on that, and there are a few areas of detail that we need to continue to resolve, but really important progress on that bit of work. Some of the areas of continuing work around that are around Northern Ireland still, and around some of the ways in which we will ensure that this treaty is respected, both in the 27 member states of the European Union and in the UK. But really important progress. Second issue which we've been working on, and where we think, touch some wood, I'll touch it, where I think we have pretty much agreement, is on what we call, what the Prime Minister calls, the implementation period, and other people call a transition period. And that is the period that's going to start the moment that we leave the European Union, the end of March next year, and will go on until the end of December 2020. Yeah? It is a transition period because it is taking us from our status as a member state of the European Union to a future status and a future relationship with the European Union, which we hope, on our part, to be a very close relationship, a very positive relationship, not just kind of commercial terms of a business, but in human terms for people living, studying, working, whether in the UK or in the European Union, areas of culture, education, security, where we want to maintain the very close security links we have. That period of implementation, to put it very, very simply, will be a period in which the rules and norms of the European Union will continue to be observed in full for the United Kingdom, but where we will no longer, because we will no longer be a member state, we will no longer take part in the decision-making of the European Union. But it's a really important period in which to prepare ourselves for the future. And the third part of what we hope to agree this evening or tomorrow morning is a negotiating mandate for the EU27, for the other member states of the European Union, for the negotiations on what that future relationship will be like. Not something that we have to effectively sign up to, it's what the 27 member states have to sign up to. But it's important because that is going to be the basis for the negotiations which we're about to start with the European Commission on that future relationship. What are going to be the commercial terms? What's it going to be like for a British company trying to trade with Spain? What's it going to be like for a Spanish company trying to export things to the UK? What's it going to be like for police cooperation between the UK and Spain and other member states of the European Union? What's it going to be like for people living in the European Union? So a three-part agreement this evening, really important, I think, in a process. We are in a process of trying to give greater clarity, greater certainty about what the future will be like. And just kind of to conclude, and then kind of so we can kind of move on to the kind of more interactive part of proceedings. Just to underline that our priority as a government, as an embassy, as a consulate, throughout this process has been you, citizens, whether they be British citizens here or Spanish or other European citizens in the UK. We recognise the uncertainty that our departure from the European Union has led to amongst many people. We have listened to the questions and concerns that so many of you have raised in events like this. Those concerns have genuinely informed the way that we've gone about this negotiation, because we started with a blank sheet of paper, to be honest. And we've had to understand what are the issues that matter to you, whether they be issues about healthcare, about residents, about pets, about your ability to work here, for your children or grandchildren to study in the UK or to study in Spanish universities. It has enriched the way that we've looked at this. Every time we've held one of these meetings, we've reported it back to the team who are working on these issues in London, and I genuinely believe that our negotiating position has been better informed and therefore stronger as a result of the meetings that we've had like this up and down Spain. So thank you. Thank you for being here this afternoon. I know there are many better things that you might be able to do on a beautiful sunny spring day in Mijas than be here, but I really welcome the presence of each and every one of you, and I hope that today's discussion will be as fruitful and as informative as previous ones have been, both for you and for us. Thank you.
I think we can open the floor now for questions to Simon and to Charmaine. Does nobody have any questions? Okay. You're going to have to shout, though, because we seem to only have one microphone here.
Telling us here quite bitter about that. I would like to ask you, so far as the negotiations are concerned, whether you think the following statement of Julia Golding, British in Europe, is accurate. She said English cheddar will have more free movement rights than Brits in Europe after Brexit.
No, I don't think I do. Well, for two reasons. One of which is we haven't begun to discuss what the free movement rights for English cheddar will be. But that's not the best answer to the question.
What we're concerned about is
Thank you.
knowledge that we have a right to live here. We will have a right to live here if the negotiations are successful and they're entirely. We will have a right to work here, to retire here, have a right to have our professional qualifications registered. And that is only within Spain. A lot of people work in multinational companies and cross borders continuously. A lot of people may not wish to stay in their country, the host country, forever. They may want to retire in another country. So far as I'm aware, that has not been addressed at all.
No, it has been addressed. It was a so this just to kind of suppose you perhaps didn't weren't able to hear the question. It was absolutely, you're absolutely right to have the concern. First of all, and this is a classic example for me of one of the areas which acquired greater prominence in our negotiating strategy because of the conversations that we've had with Britons in Europe and other organisations. So this is an issue about what happens to somebody, and correct me if I get this wrong, if you are a British professional, working age, you're living and working in Spain, and the company for which you work decides that it would now like you, this is after our departure, it would now like you to work in another member state of the European Union. Sadly, have to leave the beautiful surroundings of Mijas and go and work in Frankfurt, for example. And we said that we thought that a British citizen living in a member state and living there with the rights that are due to them by the agreement that we'd reached should have every right to go and live and work in another member state of the European Union. We refer to the thing as kind of forward residency rights, or forward movement residency rights. The position of the European Union, sadly, was in the first phase of negotiations that you should not have these rights. And we had made an offer in order to induce such rights that an EU citizen who had been living in the UK at the time of our departure, but who had then moved elsewhere, back to their member state or to another member state, who wanted to return, we said we'd give them lifetime rights of return, ability to return to the United Kingdom. Part of the problem here, to be honest, is that this is an issue that falls on the cusp between withdrawal, our departure, and the future relationship. So part of the answer, so part of the argument of the European Union has been that they don't want to prejudge what will be the future arrangements for movement of people between the UK between one member state and another, until we have looked at what will be the future arrangements for moving between the UK and any other member state of the European Union after our departure. But it absolutely has not been forgotten and is absolutely part of the negotiations which we have been having with the European Union.
The only comment in response to that is I understood in the working paper called the Central Principles on Citizens' Rights, presented by the Commission on the 24th of May 2017, that it was specifically proposed that respect of those that acquire rights, that after Brexit, they would automatically retain all the rights they had from being a member of the European Union state from thereafter.
Well,
Including free movement throughout the European Union. And that was rejected by the British government.
we have a slightly different view of what transpired. We pressed for forward movement rights, and that view said the right for you to go and live in Frankfurt and work in Frankfurt, and that was rejected by the European Commission negotiating team. So whatever they may have said in May 2017, they didn't live up to that promise, in my view. I mean, I have to say, we in this process, there is of course a third actor who I've probably failed to mention, which is the European Parliament, which has an important role to play in all this and has views on this issue, as you may know. And in the European Parliament's resolution on this issue, they would indeed allow UK citizens living in one member state of the European Union to move freely to another member state of the European Union. So we very much welcome the position of the European Parliament on this issue, and we continue to hope and aspire and work towards a deal which would allow you to go and live and work in Frankfurt if that was your wish.
Next question.
Thank you for today. My question really is about the disappearance of Article 32 this week from the company proposed agreements. I was wondering if that's joined the list of other people writing to Trade Davis and to Resumé, asking them what they're doing to actually protect us as immigrants here in Spain.
And paragraph 32, sorry.
Disappeared from Monday's agreement.
And what's in paragraph 32?
The freedom of movement.
Onward, but it's the same issue. Same issue, no? Okay, well, I mean, so I've just...
MEPs written to David Davis asking him why Article 32 is completely disappeared from the agreement papers. However, it's still referred to in numerous other areas. These MEPs written to David Davis. I wonder whether he was the ambassador for us here in Spain, but actually write to David Davis as well, asking him where Article 32 has disappeared to.
Well, we will certainly find you an answer as to what has happened to paragraph 32. As far as I'm aware, our position remains, as I've just set it out to the gentleman here, which is that we believe that you should have forward movement rights. But as to what's happened to that precise paragraph in the document published, I wasn't aware of that, I'm afraid. Sorry, but as far as I'm aware, our position remains unchanged.
Next question. Hang on, Judy. Do you want to start one of the absent questions?
Just a quick question from one of the people's group here, and it's a very specific question on bank returns in the UK. It is an EU law that any citizen in the EU can open a basic bank account in any country, but the UK banks don't seem to accept. If you are Spanish and go to the UK, they will open an account and prove that we have Spanish address. However, if you are British and try the same thing, you are told to go away. No UK address, got no deal. I believe that two of the previous ones where people have brought this question up before. They asked to open a UK bank account, tried to get another one, even if they had an account already there, they tried to get another one with the same bank and didn't refuse. Our financial people, of course, say that this is like the decision UK policy. But with Brexit and the cost of items over here, and people are worried about investments, they want to open a bank account. On a second thing, on my side, we are continually being asked to sign life certificates by UK banks.
Life certificates.
Credit that you're still alive.
Okay. No, it's just a question to which I genuinely don't have an answer.
When you become a pensioner, you have to.
Shall do you
Should we take it out of that? Hold on, let's take it out. Just a bit easy.
I'm kind of looking over to Rosalind and she's ignoring me. So, life certificates, because we used to, in the consulate, do this for people at a cost, but we no longer do the life certificates. And I'm trying to think, what's it been replaced with? Notary public. It's when, I think it's mostly in relation to pensions to prove that you're still alive. And bank accounts. Yes. Have we got any other legal eagles on the table that know the answer? So UK solicitors, Spanish abogados can issue those certificates.
They just sign you. It's very similar to somebody verifying your passport photo, isn't it? The ratification of that. I know when my mother was still here, I used to have to get them signed on a fairly annual basis, just that you prove that you're still alive to entitle you to pension. It's a very simple thing to do. It shouldn't cost hardly anything. It's, if not, if it's anybody that is having any problems, then obviously send the question to us and we can forward it to one of our experts who can help. Next question. Sorry, Judy. Oh, you didn't get an answer to the second one, Simon. Yes. About the bank accounts. Charmaine, why are you not allowed to open one?
Absolutely no idea. Absolutely no idea. And I do know that it came up at one of the Alicante sessions, and I think we agreed to go back and try and find out what it is that people in that particular situation should do. I know that the UK banks insist that you have to have a UK address to open a bank account. I really don't know what the situation is for people that are resident here who wish to open a bank account in the UK, but we can take it away.
Okay, so obviously keep you posted, either on our Facebook or on our website. Thank you. Next question. Nobody else has any questions? Yes.
Okay, so is it on? Yeah. So for anybody that didn't hear that, I think we have two questions. One is, will we continue to have reciprocal healthcare arrangements post-Brexit? And the second one was around pensions. Will pensions be frozen? So unless anybody wants to disagree with me, my understanding is that we have, in the citizens' rights negotiations, we have reached an agreement on reciprocal healthcare. So people that are here already, and who are covered in the myriad number of ways that you might be covered, because that could be as a pensioner on an S1, it could be as somebody who is living and working here and is paying into the Spanish Seguridad Social, or it could be somebody who is using an EHIC because they are here on holiday at the point of Brexit. My understanding that all of those categories continue as they are now. What will still need to be negotiated is what happens afterwards. So there is still doubt over what will the arrangements be for people who are not here legally registered and entitled to use the service at the date of us leaving. Yeah? So I think that's where the question mark is. So for anybody that's here now and is legally in the system, and I'll use this as my opportunity to plug, please make sure that you are registered on the Padrón with Extranjería and that you're registered for healthcare. Yeah? So for all of those people, there is no doubt that they will continue to be able to use the services that they use at the moment. So that's that one on... Yes, that's that one on healthcare. Yeah? On pensions, the government has agreed that it will continue to uprate the pension for all UK nationals living in Europe.
Thank you very much. Not to disagree, of course, with my consul, but actually just to amplify on the second point on pensions. And I spoke about cases where our position on these issues has been enriched by and has developed as a result of discussions with people like yourselves. And having been very close to the process on this particular issue, I was one of those who was going back to our ministers on this issue to say this issue about pensions really matters to people. People are really concerned that if we do not take action on this, that over the lifetime of their retirement, their means will gradually be degraded by inflation. And it was an issue that was taken up by the Department for Exiting the EU with the Treasury and with the Department for Work and Pensions back in the UK. And as a result of that, the government took the decision that British nationals living in the European Union would not just continue to be treated as they are now, but I think the important point is would be treated differently in the future from British retirees living in anywhere else in the world. Because that's the difference, as you'll know. If people living in the European Union have their pensions uprated. If you're not living in the European Union, that's not the case. So this is for me, is a really good example of where the British government policy has directly developed and changed as a result of the discussions that we've had up and down Spain, like the one we're having today.
Can I just ask a question? It might actually be for Juan Carlos Maldonado. I will do it in Spanish in a minute. Simon, you know that after 15 years we were not allowed to vote in the referendum. Despite the promise in October 2016 by the Conservatives that we would be entitled to vote, Theresa May called a rather quick snap election, didn't get it through in time. Is that going to be the case for the next general election, that we will in fact be able to vote?
Perhaps here is an example where we haven't been quite as successful. Trying to avoid getting onto party politics here, but as you'll know, it was a Conservative Party manifesto commitment in 2015 that we would change the legislation. That's to say, we would go back and remove the restriction on the amount of time we would change it so that you would no longer lose your vote in the United Kingdom after 15 years of residency outside the United Kingdom. And some of the preparatory work for that was done, but to be honest, there was not, as Anne says, the parliamentary time in the agenda of the government before the general election was called early last year. It remains a manifesto commitment to the Conservative Party. And you'll know that there is a private member's bill within the House of Commons which has got the backing of the government. What I can't, and I don't want to kind of to raise false hopes, I can't give you an assurance that that bill will succeed. And even if it does succeed, I can't, in all honesty, tell you that it's going to be put into, it's going to receive royal assent and be enabled before the next general election. Partly because, of course, because I don't know when the next general election is actually going to take place. I know when it should take place, but I can't tell you with all certainty when it will take place. There is, of course, a little bit of there's an administrative challenge. I won't put it say more than that about how this legislation will be enacted, because we don't have a list of British electors who have lived outside the United Kingdom for more than 15 years. Right or wrong, we do not ask all of you to register with Charmaine in the consulate. Keep her busy. So we do. One of the challenges for the government in this is working out a process which is foolproof. Yeah, because what we don't want to do either is to legislate to grant that vote and then not be 100% sure that the electoral lists that emerge from it are legitimate. But that's just, I'm just telling you as a piece of, as a boring civil servant, I have to tell you that kind of when the civil service looks at this, we say, that's brilliant, okay, and now how will we define with absolute certainty the electoral list? Well, yeah, I don't want to impugn such a fine source as that, but I took a decision to stop referring to because when I arrived here as ambassador, we used the figure of 800,000. We said, hey, there are 800,000 Brits who live in Spain. I said, brilliant. How do we work that one out? Well, that's what we think. So, well, no, I'd really like to know on what basis we ascertain that there are 800,000 Brits living here in Spain. I said, what is the solid data that we have? And the solid data that we have is the number of Britons on the Padrón, which is why we now use a figure of 300,000. Now, you're quite right to shake your head because, and I won't ask everybody in this room whether they are properly inscribed on the Padrón or not, but we know, of course, that there are Brits who are not inscribed on the Padrón. And if I may repeat Charmaine's plea, the best way, if I may say, of ensuring yourselves that you will continue to have safe and secure access to social security, healthcare, and the rest upon our departure from the European Union is pleased to be on the Padrón. And it will also give us a little bit of a better sense as to how many Brits there are indeed here in Spain. Personally, I do not think there are 1,050,000, but it is clearly more than 300,000. But how many more? Genuinely, we don't know, and I don't like to be in the business of using statistics that don't have some sort of firm base in administrative practice, which is why I talk about 300,000.
Thank you. I don't like to slate the British, though I shall, because Spain actually knows how many, and I seriously think all of this is down to the UK's mismanagement. Spain knows how many Spanish there are in the UK. They know how many British they have here in Spain from the Padrón. I think it's our own mismanagement in the UK or inefficiency that we didn't register people when they first get there. We need a system of a Padrón type of thing, don't we? In the UK, yeah. But that's another issue. It's not for me to lead the country. Can I just, leading on from voting, and this might be the one, as I said. You did try, Simon. Yeah, thank you. Okay, hold on.
So there is, of course, many of you remember there's a long history to this. There was an attempt to introduce ID cards, which was rejected by the British Parliament. The campaign led, among others, by our current Secretary of State for leaving the European Union. We looked at, when we opened the labour market in 2004 to the nationals of the new member states at that time, Poland and others who joined in May 2004. I was then one of those responsible for that policy, and we came up with something called the Worker Registration Scheme, which was an attempt to register the number of EU nationals working in the UK. That has not proven to be an entirely accurate figure. We now face the challenge of how we ensure that EU nationals currently resident in the UK, it's the flip side of the issue here, how we can ensure that EU nationals currently resident in the UK, or indeed those who arrive in the United Kingdom between our formal departure from the European Union and the end of the transition period, can continue to work, study, have access to social security, healthcare and the rest of it. And what we are coming up with is an online digital registration scheme that will take you 5 or 10 minutes to. So we are actually inventing our own version of the Padron, except it will be online.
Thank you. I have no objection to an ID card, nor do any of us who live here in Spain. We have to have one. But leading me on to the voting rights, and then we can come to something. For Juan Carlos Maldonado, perhaps, will we as British residents, maybe here in Mijas, let me ask, be entitled to vote next year in the local elections? Who can answer that? Simon, would you know the answer to that? Si estoy preguntando si podemos los británicos residentes aquí empadronados votar en las siguientes elecciones municipales. Importante para nosotros. Si no podemos votar en otro lugar, es la única elección en que podemos votar.
Lo veníamos comentando. La verdad es que es una respuesta que todavía no tenemos. Quizá el embajador pueda tener más información. Pero para nosotros es importante que la voz de 11.000 vecinos, pues evidentemente sea tenida en cuenta, ¿no? Por tanto, desde Mijas, desde el Ayuntamiento de Mijas, y entiendo que todas las fuerzas políticas entienden que es de justicia, que ese derecho a decidir el gobierno municipal, pues que puedan ejercerlo los vecinos británicos, ¿no? Por tanto, desde nuestro lado, desde nuestra Administración, la más cercana a vosotros, nuestra predisposición a que ese derecho que queréis ejercer, evidentemente, pues sea tenido en cuenta a la hora de negociar, ¿no?
Basically, all right, Simon, you can translate it.
Well, I think basically the Mayor and I would like to see you have the vote. This again is an issue that we have pursued in the course of the negotiations with the European Union. I mean, and let me say why I think both of us like to see Brits here having the vote, because I think the civic participation of Britons here in Spain through voting, through in many cases, including being concejales, occasionally even mayors in Spain, I think is a really important part of your integration into Spanish life, and you're taking, you're exercising political power and able to influence the decisions that affect you as residents here and elsewhere in Spain. So I think we are both delighted with the status quo. We tried to secure through the negotiations a recognition that right to vote in local and regional elections would be maintained after our departure. We offered the same right to EU nationals in the UK, and the Commission stuck very hard to the line that this was not actually an EU right. Again, others may disagree that this was not actually a right conferred by the treaties, but this was a right that derived from individual agreements. So we were, as it stands, we would have to find a way for Spain at a national level to recognise the right of British nationals to vote in local and regional elections. As I understand it, again, there are lawyers here. There's constitutionally, it can only be done on the basis of reciprocity, but it is something we have started discussing with the Spanish government.
Just to add to that, there is a Spanish MEP, Esteban Pons, and he's pushing for the right of British expats in Spain to be able to vote in local elections. I did actually email him about the topic, but he's not yet come back to me. I'm sure he's very busy, but there isn't actually much information out there, but this is something that he's pushing for, and failing it going through Brussels, he wants some sort of bilateral agreement in place, because Spain does have agreements with some Latin American countries whereby they're giving the vote at local elections in Spain as well. So it's a two-pronged approach. So hopefully one of those will come off. Thank you.
So that could be another very interesting campaign for Brexpats in Spain, to try to push for our rights here in local elections. I shall be speaking to Juan Maldonado about this at length. I won't translate that, it might put him off. Okay, I'm aware of the time. Could we just have one more question for Simon and Charmaine, and then we can move on to Migo Checa? Otherwise, I mean, some of our speakers have to leave fairly promptly. Yes? Sorry, she didn't hear the question. You're saying, would those on S1 be able to transfer back? So prior to being a pensioner, but post-Brexit, will they be able to come onto the Spanish system? Hold on. That was the answer from Charmaine.
Yeah, I think that we've been asked this question before, and I think the rules you would have to meet the rules at the time that you fall out of your private health insurance. I think we were asked this question for the video, weren't we, last time? So I've not understood exactly the private health thing. Are you saying that you want to leave that? So, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing. Can somebody shout it out? So you're in a private healthcare scheme at the moment, and you're leaving it.
No,
okay.
I think he's saying that S1.
Yes.
After Brexit, after 29th of March.
Yes.
Having been a resident here.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Well, that was nice. Thank you. That's a yes. Simon has just passed me a note that he has an answer from a UK representative on Article 32. So that would answer your question, I believe.
Sorry, the reason I was fiddling with my phone was not because I was consulting my Instagram account, but I was trying to see if I could get a little bit more precision on the question that the two of you asked. And I don't think it changed any substance, but I just kind of want to say, so we've just gone back to our negotiating team and asked specifically, in answer to your question, what happened to Article 32? So let me so what they say, and I hope it's more or less consistent with what I say, what I said, was that Article 32 was removed from the text. Hence, that's why it disappeared, if you like. It was removed from the text as we did not need legal text. So this is about this whole process of turning December's political agreement into a treaty. Article 32 was removed as we did not need legal text to be included that set out things that were not covered by the agreement. Yeah? So in the process of... we included everything where there was agreement, but we didn't include things where there wasn't agreement. If you follow me so far, yeah? So we pushed strongly, as I said, for the inclusion of ongoing movement rights during the first phase of negotiation. That's to say, up to the point where we have, which has all been about what happens to people who are already in another member state, or Spaniards or others who are in the UK. But the European Commission was not ready to include those rights in the agreement that we reached. The issue, as I said, they've confirmed, the issue has not been forgotten, and our negotiating team will continue to pursue the issue of onward movement rights for EU citizens in the European Union. We have reached, and this is a little bit perhaps why I wasn't aware, we have reached a reciprocal agreement on UK and EU citizens who move during the implementation period, so from the end of next March to the end of December 2020. And that agreement means that UK nationals who are currently living in the European Union, who want to move to a different member state during the implementation period, in order to obtain permanent residence in that other member state, will indeed be able to do so. Yeah? With exactly the same rights. And then to go on and picking up the point I made, that we very much share the European Parliament's interest in this issue. I've been working with the European Parliament on this point, and that going forward, our commitment is to seek a final deal that's in the mutual interests of citizens living across the continent. And just to kind of pick up again the European Parliament's Brexit steering group said just yesterday that we also welcome the removal of Article 32, which limits the rights of onward movement for UK citizens in EU 27. So the European Parliament actually look upon the removal of that article as a positive thing because it doesn't exclude the right. And that the European Parliament will continue to push for these rights of UK citizens to be able to move freely within the 27 remaining member states of the European Union. So we will continue to work with the European Parliament to ensure that you and other UK nationals living here should secure that right of onward movement beyond the end of the implementation period in December 2020.
The worst places in the world to be landlocked.
Do you know, I just so love these meetings that we have with Simon and with Juan Carlos, because I always leave here feeling so buoyant and positive and thinking, hey, I can continue here for the rest of my life without worry. Thank you so much. It's great to get assurance, if nothing else. Thank you. Charmaine, you want to say something?
I've become obsessed with this healthcare one now. So just to confirm, basically the agreement is anybody who meets the criteria for being resident, let's say, in the member state at the point of us leaving the EU will continue to have access to the same benefits that they would have been entitled to. Do you see what I mean? So if you're resident, if you are permanently resident here, it doesn't matter that you're not a pensioner yet, your contributions will continue to aggregate and you will continue to be entitled to the pension and therefore to the healthcare treatment. You're not working here now, but presumably you've contributed some in the UK, so you would have been, yeah. So at the date that you become a pensioner, because you're resident now, I'm just making that assumption, yeah, that you're resident now, then you will continue to benefit.
Thank you. I think we need to be a little bit aware of time. So can we pass to Miguel Checa now? Yes? At this moment, I believe Juan Carlos Maldonado has to leave. He has another sad appointment, I believe, at the cemetery. So thank you so much for your time and continued 100% support from Mijas. Thank you so much. Thank you.
El sitio. Good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, talking to you, and being here with Mr. Ambassador Manley and Juan Hernandez, the people from Martinez Chavarria, especially David Sanchez, that made possible that I'm here today. Charmaine, Council, and Victoria. So it's a pleasure to be here to talk about such a nice topic as Brexit. Not simple. I want to make a few clarifications in a very simple way regarding dates. Because sometimes with all the Brexit terminology, because we are creating a new terminology regarding Brexit and the whole Brexit process, sometimes we can miss an important dates. The ambassador has perfectly explained those dates, but I want to make emphasis on those dates. When happens Brexit, meaning the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the European Union institutions. It happens on the 29th of March next year. That's it. We know that. But what are the consequences of that for you? Not much. Not much, because at that time the withdrawal agreement enters into place, and we will have the so-called transition period or the implementation period. Personally, I prefer the term transition period because I'm not seeing that much implemented. What I see is a transition period, but the transition period is good. It's really good. We've earned a lot of time. Because after March 2019, we've gained 21 months of peace and tranquility, let's say. So altogether, it's almost 3 years. It's almost 3 years that there is not so much problem. What happens after Brexit? The withdrawal of the UK from the European Union institutions on March next year. For you, actually nothing, because the whole body of European Union law will still be applicable. The whole body of European Union law is still applicable for 21 months ahead, after March 2019. So during the transition period, you are entitled to everything that you are entitled now. So March 2019 is not the date of your problems, of your nightmares, of your concern. The real problem is what happens after the end of the transition period. So we are talking about 1st January 2021. That's the problem. That's the problem, because we don't have an answer yet. What will be the new relationship between the European Union and the UK? We don't know yet. And what I know a little about that is, I'm sure the ambassador might give you answers on some answers on that future relationship that I'm not able to give you. But the negotiators from the European Union insisted that there could be no negotiation of the future model of relationship unless all the terms of the withdrawal agreement had been agreed to.
So what we have agreed now this week has been great for that sense of tranquility we've gained. And that time we have gained 21 months ahead after March 2019. But we don't really know what the future model of relationship between the UK and the European Union will be after beginning on the 1st of January 2021. We have time. We have time to develop that model of relationship. I'm sure some of the basic freedoms will remain. I'm sure some in some form through bilateral agreements. There has been so much talk about the possible models of future relationships starting on 2021. The Norwegian model, the Swiss model. The Swiss model, in my humble opinion, is something that will resemble what will happen with the United Kingdom. We are entangled, the European Union. I mean, the European Union is entangled with Switzerland through a network of conventions. It's like 100 conventions. Switzerland is part of the European Economic Area, but they decided not to enter in association with the United States with that model, the European Economic Area model, which is the Norwegian model. We've also heard of the Norwegian model. So the Swiss decided not to follow the Norwegian model. They decided to have a network of bilateral conventions. Instead of a network of bilateral conventions with the European Union, it could be just a single agreement between the UK, and of course it could be a single agreement and not a web or network of bilateral conventions. But that's still to be decided. That's still to be decided. Anyway, we've read, we've heard about the problem in Northern Ireland. That's still a problem for the future model of relationship. And there is a much closer problem for us here than Northern Ireland. There is Gibraltar. With Gibraltar, we have a very interesting situation from international law point of view, because supposedly Spanish government has a veto on the future on whether the future model of relationship with the United Kingdom is also extended to Gibraltar. It remains to be seen whether the Spanish government will be pushing forward to exercising this veto of the future status of Gibraltar vis-à-vis the rest of the European Union. For the moment, what we've seen in the press is that the Spanish foreign minister, that is a diplomatic by career, he's only seemed to be interested in the joint use of the airport as a condition for the extension of the future model of relationship with the United Kingdom to Gibraltar. But of course, Gibraltarian authorities have already said that they are not ready to accept the idea of a joint use or joint control over the airport. So that's another piece of the puzzle for the future. What will happen with Gibraltar, and whether Spain would be ready to exercise his veto. The Gibraltarian government has also said that possibly they could take Spanish veto rights to the European Court of Justice, because they are thinking that this veto has come out of nowhere. Where is this veto right? Where is this veto? It has appeared in some of the documents. We've seen it, even in a footnote in one of the official documents. But what's the legal basis of Spanish veto over the future status of Gibraltar within the new model of relationship that will happen in 2021? Well, these are my reflections on Brexit. I want to give you confidence because we have a lot of time to see what the future model will be, and as the whole body of European Union law will remain in force for 21 months after March 2019. So we have gained a lot of time for everyone's convenience. The other topic that I wanted to talk to you is that we at Martinez Echeverria Lawyers, you see our publicity here and our people here and then the first line. We are trying to help you in the process with any questions you may have. We are trying to assist you. Of course, we are lawyers. We are interested also in other topics that have not been talked about today, like inheritance and succession, for example. You may know that there is a European Union regulation 650, sorry. And this European regulation is not enforced in the United Kingdom, but is enforced in Spain. And this is now. And this European Union regulation is applicable to all of you if you live here. Okay. So the question is why the European succession regulation 650, is not applicable in the United Kingdom. Well, the answer is that the European Union regulation 650, the European regulation on successions, on your inheritance. This European Union regulation is part of the body of the European Union law that is called judicial civil cooperation. And for matters of judicial civil cooperation, already, we are not talking of Brexit, already, the United Kingdom has a very particular position, because the United Kingdom can pick and choose whatever regulation the UK government likes, and decide what other pieces of legislation they don't like. And therefore, they decide not to be bound, the UK government decides not to be bound by that regulation. So the UK has decided not to be bound by the European regulation of succession. They have decided not to be bound by the European Union regulation on matrimonial property. That is another issue that we as lawyers deal a lot. Matrimonial property is always one of the main areas of our work, next to successions for foreigners living in Spain. So what happens is that the United Kingdom can decide what regulations are applicable in the UK, what regulations are not applicable in the UK. But for you that you live in Spain, the European Union regulation is applicable. So the main message that I can convey to you is that if you are living in Spain, definitely you need a last will and testament made in Spain. The rules change a lot with the European Union regulation. And the European Union regulation is what is going to be applied by a Spanish judge, by a Spanish notary, or by a judge or a notary in any other European Union country except the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom is outside the scope of the European Union regulation. You need a last will and testament, because otherwise the main intestacy rule will surprise you. The applicable law is a Spanish law. If you are resident in Spain, and you don't have a Spanish will, the applicable law is a Spanish law. And what happens if someone dies intestate? That means without a valid will and testament. Then the Spanish law is applied. Well, only the sons are heirs. Basically, the spouse is not a strong heir, gets minimum rights, under Spanish law. So if you don't want to be surprised by the application of Spanish laws to your succession, we are not talking about taxation. We are talking about succession rules. If you don't want to be surprised, or your relatives, or you don't want your relatives to be surprised by the application of Spanish succession laws, you need to make a last will and testament. In that will, in that last will and testament, you can include a clause, we call it professio juris, that means choice of law, and you can choose the law of your nationality. So it's just as simple as making a last will in Spain, choosing English law as the applicable law to your succession, and that way you will keep the free disposition of all your assets as you are used to in the English legal system. That's a basic principle for you, the free disposition of my assets. But that's a principle that is not applicable in Spanish law. In Spanish law, 2/3 of the assets are for children. 2/3. 2/3 are for the descendants, whether children or grown-ups. 2/3 of the estate are for descendants. This is a forced heirship rule. Forced heirship rule. So if you want to escape from that forced heirship, if you want to escape from the Spanish intestacy rules, you just need a testament making a choice of English law as the applicable law to your succession. Prior to the entry into force of the regulation, this was not necessary. Prior to the entry into force of the European Union regulation in 2015, this wasn't necessary because the applicable law was still Spanish law according to Spanish civil code rules. But the European regulation has changed everything. And it is not Spanish law, it is not the Spanish civil code, it is the European Union regulation that has made the need for a testament important after August 2015. And this is the main message I wanted to convey to you regarding last will and testaments. And I remain, of course, available for your questions when we open the floor to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. I should just pass you on now to Vicky, who's probably going to reinforce a lot of that was said, but she might have a novelty, a tiny little new thing.
Thank you, Juan. Just to add on to what Miguel was saying about wills, is that I know at previous Brexpat events people have been concerned that when we do leave the European Union, whether or not this will affect their wills and their succession, and whether or not the regulation will continue to apply post-Brexit. And there isn't a requirement that the national law which you choose to apply in your will has to be a European Union law. So you can be American, Chinese, whatever your nationality is, that can apply to, that will apply if you add the clause into your will. And it's not going to be affected by Brexit. And also those with dual nationalities, they can choose which of their nationalities apply in their wills as well. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Do we have any questions for Miguel and Vicky? Yeah, Jenny. Can you shout? That's better.
Yes, the European Union regulation that establishes the right of any citizen from whatever nation in the world, even an American could do it, to choose his national law as the law applicable to his section, even if he is residing in Spain. And this is applicable to them, from people from Denmark, from Russia, from China, and this is not going to be affected by Brexit, because as I said earlier, this European regulation is not enforced in the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom had the right to remain outside this European Union regulation. But now the regulation applies, and it will be applicable by the Spanish authorities and the authorities of any other European Union country. So
it's either, if you don't add the clause in, it's basically where you're residing, the law which applies. So if you're married to a Spanish national, it's not like they have freedom of choice just to pick whichever law they choose to apply to their will. No, they would be subject to the Spanish law. So he can't choose for the British law to apply to his will, for example. Well, because he's a Spanish national, unless he has dual Spanish-British nationality, as I was saying, he'd be able to choose. But because he's a Spanish national, for example, for those people, I know there's been talk in the past about British nationals changing to Spanish nationality. And in the past, we've had quite a few questions about how you go about getting Spanish nationality. Those British nationals who gain Spanish nationality are technically required to renounce their British nationality, in which case, in those circumstances, they would be subject to the Spanish law. And if they'd made a will previously which applies the British law, with no longer being a British national, they would have subject to the Spanish forced heirship rules. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, please let me. Yes, if your precise question is whether your husband of Spanish nationality can choose the English law as the law applicable to his section, the answer is no. For a Spanish national, there is no possibility of choosing a different law from his own. What he could do is to take residence in the United Kingdom. And when he takes residence in the United Kingdom, things might change a little bit, might change a little bit, or change residence to another country. But if he intends to remain in Spain, I guess, he remains. So there is no way out for the Spanish national who is residing in Spain. The applicable law to his succession is a Spanish law. The problem with this is that I said that 2/3 of the estate are compulsorily for the descendants, and there is not much freedom of movement with regard to spouses. There is one possibility anyway permitted by Spanish law, that is a life interest. You can give to your spouse, according to a Spanish law, a life interest in testament, always in testament, never in intestate cases. You can bequeath a life interest to your spouse, and that life interest will bind any descendants that are even against this possibility. So, this is how we do it in the Spanish way to protect spouses. The testament with the life interest in favor of the spouse. That keeps descendants out for some time, okay?
She's going to leave it all to the embassy.
Well, if you're a British national, yes, you can do that. You can change your will as often as you like. So and you can add that clause. A lot of people have had wills in the past, and they're now in the process of drafting new wills to add that clause, because if not, then if you're living here in Spain, then it defaults to the Spanish law to apply to succession. Well, it could be challenged, because you would then technically have to, your succession would be under Spanish law and the forced heirship rules. I think that's right, isn't it, Miguel?
So you are. So the question is about possible change of your nationality. Yes, it will be valid, because it was valid when when you made it, and you were a UK citizen when you made it. So the choice of English law, this is an important thing. The clause in the last will and testament stating that you prefer to have your estate governed by English law. This is the important piece in that last will and testament, and it will be valid unless you revoke that last will and testament. One thing that I wanted to add just a little bit is that because it is important not to forget this, if you still keep assets in the United Kingdom, it is much more advisable to have two testaments. One in the UK for your British assets, and one in Spain for your Spanish assets, or your assets elsewhere in the European Union. Okay, this is important. Don't forget that if you still keep assets in the United Kingdom. Okay. Yes, Sam?
I was just about to say, being very aware of the time, because Simon has another interview at 2:00. I think, Rosalind, with due respect, they're sort of more personal questions that perhaps you would be better asking the experts afterwards. Oh, you've had the... Well, if anybody else has any more questions, I'm sure people would like the opportunity to socially sort of mill amongst our experts and the panel. Apart from that, I think we can just about close now, do you suppose? Don't forget to see our joint nationality information and support the campaign. Obviously, for anything to happen, we need your support. There's going to be some nibbles and drinks served in the restaurant area where you came through up the steps. And for now, I sincerely hope you've enjoyed our company. We've certainly enjoyed having yours. I thank you to Mr. Simon Manley, Charmaine Albuin, Miguel Checa, Victoria Westhead, and obviously Juan Carlos Maldonado, who's left. Thank you to the Avanto for their hospitality, but mostly give yourselves a big round of applause, and thank you, and keep with us. Thank you.